wouldn't believe it if I told you.
But I could run like the wind blows.
Back in the day, Forrest Gump succeeded in transcending box office success and growing into a cultural phenomenon. The heartwarming tale of an incredibly simple man finding himself at the center of pivotal moments in American history. This film, by director Robert Zemeckis and starring talents like Tom Hanks, blended historical moments into Forrest's everyday journey, making him a lot more appealing to the viewers. Forrest Gump won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for Hanks, and it has come to rest as one of the most cherished movies of the 1990s. However, outside the commonly known facts about the film, there are some iconic moments from the film that have eluded viewers all these years, and this is exactly what will be our focus in this video. Join us as we uncover some of these thrilling moments. There is a huge news for all the fans of the movie at the end. Forrest Gump was a bundle of surprises, from casting decisions to Tom Hanks improvising one of the most iconic lines from the movie. Also, some behind-the-scenes details like the funding of the famous running sequence by Hanks himself and the cutting-edge CGI used in a few key scenes contribute hugely to these unpopular facts about the movie. These fall under the category of hidden gems that just go to make movie legacies all that more remarkable upon revisit. 1. Casting considerations original. You see, casting in Hollywood is a very fluid process, and such was the case with Forrest Gump. Each project comes with expectations and projections that determine who does what when it finally kicks off. In the case of Forrest Gump, some of the actors that were originally cast for certain roles didn't foresee the huge success that the project would become, and so passed on the roles, leading to them being replaced by alternatives. For instance, Tom Hanks, who became one with the character Forrest, was not the first choice for the role. Originally, the role was offered to actors like John Travolta and Bill Murray, but both of them turned down. Following how the movie later turned out, Travolta later admitted his regret. The same happened in the role of Jenny, played by Robin Wright, which was almost handed over to Demi Moore. Though it initially seemed that the original casts were better fitted for the roles, people really can't imagine what it would have been like if they had taken it. Such unpredictability in casting made the movie get the iconic performances now associated with it, and has shown how anything different could have drastically changed its feel. Who knows, the movie might not have been as popular. 2. The School Bus Kids. At this point, we have established that going for unusual options in casting could actually shake things up for good, and that's exactly what we see in the iconic school scene. In one of the opening scenes, young Forrest boards the school bus and is greeted with cold stares from the other children. Interestingly, a detail that hasn't been so popular is that neither of the 2 children who deny him a seat were professional child actors, but instead, they were the children of some crew members, recruited to play these roles. The girl who says, "This seat's taken," is Elizabeth Hanks, daughter of Tom Hanks, and the boy seated next to her is the son of director Robert Zemeckis. It was such a small cameo that added a personal touch to the production. One couldn't tell that they were not professionals from their performance, as it contributed to the overall feel of that scene. 3. The accent challenge. Tom Hanks needed to depict a typical Southern accent completely to be the character Forrest Gump. The trick, of course, was to deliver that Southern accent as if it were real and natural and not an act. He worked very closely in tandem with Michael Connor Humphreys in the role of young Forrest to emulate his natural speech patterns. This caused the voice to have consistency and be endearing to audiences now associated with Forrest. This attention to detail made Hanks' performance all the more believable in his Oscar-winning role. 4. Hanks funded the running scene. Do you remember that famous running scene from the movie? Well, there is a really interesting backstory to that scene, one that was most unusual. In fact, the scene was almost thrown out during production. The scene of Forrest running for over 3 years was almost discarded for budgetary reasons. It was just too expensive for them to film at the time, considering that the available tech at the time only allowed them to be physically present at the different locations that were far apart, which was a logistical nightmare. The extended sequence was too expensive for Paramount Pictures, but the dedicated Tom Hanks offered to finance the scene himself, as did director Robert Zemeckis. Hanks and Zemeckis settled with a deal to split the production costs equally. However, this wasn't a loss for the two, as Hanks was also given a share in the profits of the movie. At the time of production, this was a huge gamble, but later turned out to be a great move, considering the huge success that the movie recorded. Many haven't forgotten that it was due to this generosity that one of the most recognized scenes in Forrest Gump could be achieved. 5. Hanks's decision to take percentage points. Rather than the traditional salary for the work he did for Forrest Gump, do you know that Tom Hanks took a gamble by opting to take percentage points of the profits of the film? At that time, it sounded like a gamble but became very lucrative. The movie went on to gross more than $678 million worldwide. Hanks netted far more than he would have by taking a standard salary. This decision really underlines how much faith Hanks had in the movie and paid off handsomely in both an artistic and financial sense. 6. CGI and war scenes. For the most part, Forrest Gump used practical effects. The scenes showing the Vietnam War used some of the most progressive CGI technologies at that time. Real stunts are combined with computer-generated imagery for the explosions, gunfire, and destruction of everything around. At the time, this was a relatively new technique, and Forrest Gump took full advantage of CGI during many pivotal scenes, most of them during the moments of war with Vietnam. Instances like the explosions, bullet wounds, and even Lieutenant Dan's amputations were digitally enhanced. It is these state-of-the-art effects that create an almost realistic feeling of chaos and war, in combination with real-life stunts and practical effects. This was a really innovative mix between CGI and traditional filmmaking at the time, once more setting this movie as both a technical and storytelling marvel. 7. Foreshadowing of astronaut role. This particular fact about Forrest Gump must have gone over the heads of many of the fans. Outside the series of more pronounced events in the movie, there were some scenes that foreshadowed some interesting events that later took place. In the movie, viewers are likely to be more taken with Forrest going about and performing an incredible myriad of activities in some popular scenes like running, playing ping pong, and taking part in a whole war. However, one point Tom Hanks fans wouldn't want to miss noticing is the subtle nod to another iconic role in Hanks's career, which is playing astronaut Jim Lovell in Apollo 13. He dons this NASA cap in several scenes, perhaps a hint of his future portrayal in the space-themed movie. Such foreshadowing is representative of how connected Hollywood roles can be and presents an entertaining Easter egg for fans of Hanks's broader filmography. 8. The feather scene. At the very beginning of Forrest Gump, an extremely delicate feather floats through the air and lands at Forrest's feet. Most viewers believe that this was a CGI feather. However, it was actually filmed with a real feather. The feather was controlled by wires and filmed in front of a blue screen, a very smart technique that gave to the scene its magic. It is a symbol of life's indifference, which drifts aimlessly and falls at times most opportune, much as Forrest's journey through history came about. 9. Lieutenant Dan's necklace. The success of most movies depends on how well they are able to blend into the world of make-believe, immersing the audience in the experience. This is one fact that Forrest Gump and its cast understood so well, which contributed to the success of the movie. It's no secret that Gary Sinise's portrayal of Lieutenant Dan is iconic and adored, but one fact that no one might have noticed is the backstory to one of his costume pieces, which points to the strong significance of the necklace he wears throughout the movie. It speaks of something that links real life to the storyline of the movie. The fact about it is that the necklace actually belongs to Sinise's brother-in-law, Jack Trees, who actually served as a Vietnam veteran. Trees gave the necklace to Sinise for good luck during filming, which added to the character of Lieutenant Dan, an extra layer of connection to actual soldiers who served in Vietnam. The necklace added much more realism to the character and was brought in as a symbol of respect for all veterans who fought in the war. It's just amazing seeing how deep what we see on screen goes beyond the surface level. 10. Elvis Presley's cameo and Kurt Russell's contribution. In one ingenious scene early in the movie, young Forrest shows Elvis Presley how to dance while he's staying at Forrest's home. While Presley's double physically portrays the famous singer, the voice that audiences hear isn't his. Instead, the production team hired Kurt Russell to fill this role. Initially, Russell wasn't exactly credited for the role he played, but this was later revealed. He had portrayed Elvis in an earlier biopic, and his voice was dubbed in for this scene in Forrest Gump. Eventually, the production benefited hugely from taking this step to associate Elvis's name with the movie. The casting of such a big star for so small a vocal role points towards many of those subtle touches that helped elevate Forrest Gump from every other movie of that time. This, however, isn't the reason that the movie was so much of a success. They also had some of the most talented actors in Hollywood putting in their best. 11. Filming faced challenges on health grounds. Hanks was ill at the time of filming some of the most pivotal scenes, including the famous running sequence. Never one to complain, Hanks soldiered on with the scenes at hand. Even when not feeling his best, Hanks was committed to the role. This resilience behind the scenes shows the professionalism of Hanks in bringing Forrest's story to life under the most unfavorable conditions. 12. The iconic bench. One of the most memorable scenes in Forrest Gump shows Forrest sitting on a park bench waiting for a bus. This was the scene with the famous line, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get." During the production, that bench sat in Savannah, Georgia, but it has been moved indoors to the Savannah History Museum to protect it from weathering and vandalism. This is because the bench became sort of a tourist attraction following the success of the movie. It just became important that this piece of history be properly preserved. However, what many might not know is that 4 identical benches were made for the actual filming and placed strategically to accommodate the different shots. It wasn't just only that one. The rest of the benches are today in private collections and auctions across the country. Today, if you would like to see the one available to the public, the museum is thronged with fans who want to see the very bench on which Forrest narrated his story. However, no one is allowed to sit on it. 13. Tom Hanks' iconic line was improvised. Probably the most remembered line in Forrest Gump is when Hanks introduces himself saying, "My name is Forrest Gump." Perfectly emblematic of innocence and candor, this turned out to be one of those lines that engraved its place in the history of movies. Surprisingly enough, this iconic line was not part of the script, but was inserted into the movie by Hanks during shooting and went on to become one of the defining moments in the movie. The innocence of the line was as simple as Forrest's childlike honesty and nailed the character deep in the hearts of viewers. 14. Hanks's agonies with the running scene. The Forrest running scene in the movie just came with a lot of baggage. Except for the fact that the scene almost never made it to production, it was also a very tedious process to film given the technology that was available at the time, as recounted by Tom Hanks. Although Forrest's running scenes may seem effortless, Tom Hanks has let on that these are actually the most difficult parts to film. It meant Hanks had to travel to different locations within very hot periods to film that part of the production. And the crazy thing was that these locations were spread across different states. The 3-year run, contracted into a single-minute montage in the movie, was so endless that even Hanks himself claimed it was among the most physically draining aspects of his career. The stamina Hanks portrayed on the movie set was a reflection of the will of Forrest. 15. Forrest's investment in Apple. One of the more offbeat elements of the film involves Forrest's knack for making wise investments. After receiving a letter from Apple Inc., Forrest explains that Lieutenant Dan invested in some kind of fruit company, making him a very wealthy man. Of course, this is a remark towards the real exponential growth of Apple. One of the most appealing juxtapositions in this movie involves Forrest's simplicity and humility coupled with his sudden rise to affluence. His shrewd financial success contrasted rather sharply with his otherwise unassuming lifestyle. 16. Accuracy of the Vietnam War scenes. Part of the appeal of Forrest Gump was the fact that they stayed true to real life as much as they could, breaching the gap between reality and acting to a reasonable extent. Many have praised the accuracy of the scenes related to the Vietnam War in Forrest Gump. This was not an accident. The film producers, having been advised by military historians such as Bill Allison, worked to create realistic battle conditions that experienced a high intensity of heat, a lot of confusion, and heavy bouts of fear. Such muddy swamps and heavy forests were designed to be similar to the harsh terrain put before U.S. forces. This emotional weight of war effectively merges with the quirky, personal narration by Forrest, treading a fine line between lightheartedness and solemnity. 17. Bubba Gump Shrimp becomes reality. In the movie, Forrest fulfills his promise to his friend Bubba and opens the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, which becomes a huge success. What most fans do not know, however, is that the fake business came to life. In 1996, the first Bubba Gump Shrimp restaurant opened in California, and today they dot the globe. Forrest's dream of owning some sort of shrimp enterprise brought it into the real world, dissolving those barriers between fiction and fact, and providing a tasty way for the fans to celebrate the movie. 18. Historical events like the hurricane scene. As a highlight to the previous point, Forrest Gump is full of historical events, many of which recursively interlink within the nexus of the storyline. The hurricane scene is one such incident in the movie that really depicts the devastation caused by real-life hurricanes affecting the shrimping communities. Although Forrest survives and even benefits from it, the hurricane is portrayed as eerily similar to the event of a natural disaster in history, which was Hurricane Carmen that hit the Gulf of Mexico and the southern United States back in 1974 and had a serious impact on the shrimping industry. Here the movie can grasp real history and anchor it into the fictional storyline, adding layer after layer of depth to make this film not only entertaining but instructive. 19. Haley Joel Osment thought he got a lead role. Not many would recall the protagonist of The Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment, playing the role of Forrest's son in the ending shots of Forrest Gump. According to Osment in interviews, he actually admitted later that he thought he got a major role in the movie when he was initially cast for the role. That didn't just turn out that way later on. Although the role was small, it was significant as it marked the appearance of this young actor in a major film. It certainly adds an extra layer of behind-the-scenes intrigue to this blooper. 20. The unfinished sequel. Forrest Gump was so successful that a sequel seemed to be almost a given. In fact, a script for Forrest Gump 2 was written, and early production discussions took place. Then came the 9/11 attacks in 2001, and the project was shelved indefinitely. The sequel was never fully fleshed out, since the filmmakers felt the tone of the world had changed, and it simply didn't feel right anymore to continue Forrest's story. However, there seems to be some good news for fans as the sequel is set to premiere in 2025. We look forward to the making of another appealing piece. That will be it on this topic, and you are free to include some others that we might have missed in the comments. We will see you in the next one.